I am from the dirtiest of the dirty. The rest of the South ain't got it like this. Last up to the podium, Mississippi in this. I mean, just the name alone is send chills down your spine. I can't stand her sometimes, but she mine. You see, some cats move away and go soft in the city. Your hardest wouldn't last 10 minutes in Mississippi. We got dirty cops, we got crooked judges, we got black on black crime. And don't get it twisted, the Klan is still alive. My name is Artist Romero, and today I'm representing Mississippi. Now dig this. A big hole in the earth leaks oil into the Gulf. It pushes out all the oxygen and kills all the fish and stuff. It evaporates into rain clouds and it falls from the sky and then it rains on the earth. And what else dies? Now I'm not the smartest brother in the world, and I don't pretend to be, but the obvious is just something that you can't get past me. Now I'm not trying to scare you, I'm just trying to put some things on your mind. I know you get busy with the bills and the babies, but we got to slow it down and think sometimes. We live in water bodies on a water planet, so water should be on our mind. We can't trust it coming out of the faucet, we can't trust it falling out of the sky, and we haven't really talked about it until now. That is until Flint got poisoned and New Orleans damn near drowned. And then somebody echoes your idea without you having to say it out loud. They caught a glimpse of the future. They saw the crowds. They say God will it and the creek don't rise. Well, last year the creek took my house. You trying to tell me that was God outside? Is the earth gonna have to kill us in order to get our attention? Because imagine Katrina in the middle of a pandemic. You're safe here, but in that scenario we won't be. Because imagine water on top of disease. We know from experience that no matter what Kanye West says on TV, America will prove once again how it really feels about you and me. You see, you're safe here. So now imagine a force field powered by pure love and light, made of music and metaphors that caress you real tight. It won't take away your problems, it doesn't work that way, but it will give you a place to catch your breath and pray. You're safe here. You have to find the energy that the ancestors gave you deep in your soul, because the wicked doesn't rest, and there's revolution tomorrow. It's a good thing we have instruments and equipment on the truck. If not, the police will be trying to break this gathering of black people up. But you're safe here. The dirtiest of the dirty. The rest of the South ain't got it like this. Last up to the podium, Mississippi in this. I mean, just the name alone is send chills down your spine. I can't stand her sometimes, but she mine. You see, some cats move away and go soft in the city. Your hardest wouldn't last 10 minutes in Mississippi. We got dirty cops, we got crooked judges, we got black on black crime. And don't get it twisted, the Klan is still alive. My name is Artist Romero, and today I'm representing Mississippi. Now dig this. A big hole in the earth leaks oil into the Gulf. It pushes out all the oxygen and kills all the fish and stuff. It evaporates into rain clouds and it falls from the sky and then it rains on the earth. And what else dies? Now I'm not the smartest brother in the world, and I don't pretend to be, but the obvious is just something that you can't get past me. Now I'm not trying to scare you, I'm just trying to put some things on your mind. I know you get busy with the bills and the babies, but we got to slow it down and think sometimes. We live in water bodies on a water planet, so water should be on our mind. We can't trust it coming out of the faucet, we can't trust it falling out of the sky, and we haven't really talked about it until now. That is until Flint got poisoned and New Orleans damn near drowned. And then somebody somebody echoes your idea without you having to say it out loud. They caught a glimpse of the future. They saw the crowds. They say God willing and the creek don't rise. Well, last year the creek took my house. You try and tell me that was God outside? Is the earth gonna have to kill us in order to get our attention? Because imagine Katrina in the middle of a pandemic. You're safe here, but in that scenario we won't be. Because imagine water on top of disease. We know from experience that no matter what Kanye West says on TV, America will prove once again how it really feels about you and me. You see, you're safe here. So now imagine a force field powered by pure love and light, made of music and metaphors that caress you real tight. It won't take away your problems, it doesn't work that way, but it will give you a place to catch your breath and pray. You're safe here. You have to find the energy that the ancestors gave you deep in your soul, because the wicked doesn't rest, and there's revolution tomorrow. It's a good thing we have instruments and equipment on the truck. If not, the police will be trying to break this gathering of black people up. But you're safe here. The dirtiest of the dirty. The rest of the South ain't got it like this. Last up to the podium, Mississippi in this. I mean, just the name alone is send chills down your spine. I can't stand her sometimes, but she mine. You see, some cats move away and go soft in the city. Your hardest wouldn't last 10 minutes in Mississippi. We got dirty cops, we got crooked judges, we got black on black crime. And don't get it twisted, the Klan is still alive. My name is Artist Romero, and today I'm representing Mississippi. Now dig this. A big hole in the earth leaks oil into the Gulf. It pushes out all the oxygen and kills all the fish and stuff. It evaporates into rain clouds and it falls from the sky and then it rains on the earth. And what else dies? Now, I'm not the smartest brother in the world, and I don't pretend to be, but the obvious is just something that you can't get past me. Now, I'm not trying to scare you, I'm just trying to put some things on your mind. I know you get busy with the bills and the babies, but we got to slow it down and think sometimes. We live in water bodies on a water planet, so water should be on our mind. We can't trust it coming out of the faucet, we can't trust it falling out of the sky, and we haven't really talked about it until now. That is until Flint got poisoned and New Orleans damn near drowned. And then somebody echoes your idea without you having to say it out loud. They caught a glimpse of the future. They saw the crowds. They say God willing and the creek don't rise. Well, last year the creek took my house. You try and tell me that was God outside? Is the earth gonna have to kill us in order to get our attention? Because imagine Katrina in the middle of a pandemic. You're safe here, but in that scenario we won't be. Because imagine water on top of disease. We know from experience that no matter what Kanye West says on TV, America will prove once again how it really feels about you and me. You see, you're safe here. So now imagine a force field powered by pure love and light, made of music and metaphors that caress you real tight. It won't take away your problems, it doesn't work that way, but it will give you a place to catch your breath and pray. You're safe here. You have to find the energy that the ancestors gave you deep in your soul, because the wicked doesn't rest, and there's revolution tomorrow. It's a good thing we have instruments and equipment on the truck. If not, the police will be trying to break this gathering of black people up. But you're safe here. am from the dirtiest of the dirty. The rest of the South ain't got it like this. Last up to the podium, Mississippi in this. I mean, just the name alone is send chills down your spine. I can't stand her sometimes, but she mine. You see, some cats move away and go soft in the city. Your hardest wouldn't last 10 minutes in Mississippi. We got dirty cops, we got crooked judges, we got black on black crime. And don't get it twisted, the Klan is still alive. My name is Artist Romero, and today I'm representing Mississippi. Now dig this. A big hole in the earth leaks oil into the Gulf. It pushes out all the oxygen and kills all the fish and stuff. It evaporates into rain clouds and it falls from the sky and then it rains on the earth. And what else dies? Now, I'm not the smartest brother in the world, and I don't pretend to be, but the obvious is just something that you can't get past me. Now, I'm not trying to scare you, I'm just trying to put some things on your mind. I know you get busy with the bills and the babies, but we got to slow it down and think sometimes. We live in water bodies on a water planet, so water should be on our mind. We can't trust it coming out of the faucet, we can't trust it falling out of the sky, and we haven't really talked about it until now. That is, until Flint got poisoned and New Orleans damn near drowned. And then somebody echoes your idea without you having to say it out loud. They caught a glimpse of the future. They saw the crowds. They say God willing and the creek don't rise. Well, last year the creek took my house. You try and tell me that was God outside? Is the earth gonna have to kill us in order to get our attention? Because imagine Katrina in the middle of a pandemic. You're safe here, but in that scenario we won't be. Because imagine water on top of disease. We know from experience that no matter what Kanye West says on TV, America will prove once again how it really feels about you and me. You see, you're safe here, so now imagine a force field powered by pure love and light, made of music and metaphors that caress you real tight. It won't take away your problems, it doesn't work that way, but it will give you a place to catch your breath and pray. You're safe here. You have to find the energy that the ancestors gave you deep in your soul, because the wicked doesn't rest, and there's revolution tomorrow. It's a good thing we have instruments and equipment on the truck. If not, the police will be trying to break this gathering of black people up. But you're safe here.
Dear Holy Spirit, we just want to offer our collective gratitude for this life that you've given us. We want to say thank you for the waters that keep us whole, that give us life, that help us to be who we are. We thank you for the sunshine. We thank you for all of the energy that comes to us, that helps us fight, that helps us struggle, that helps us keep moving forward. And we thank you for this land. We thank you for the original peoples of this land who fight to this day to keep us whole, to keep us strong, to protect us. We thank you for everything that you've given us, for the ability to fight for Black lives, for the knowledge to understand that this climate fight is our fight, and for the power that you infuse in us every day to wake up, to stand in solidarity, and to move together. Ashe. Ashe. Welcome to the national launch of the Red, Black, and Green New Deal. My name is Colette Pichon Battle. I'm the National Project Lead for the Red, Black, and Green New Deal.
Hi, and I'm Valencia Gunder, and I'm the National Organizing Lead for the Red, Black, and Green New Deal.
Valencia, I see that you're black and you work in climate. How did that happen? How did you get into climate work?
Well, I'm from the South, right? And I'm from Miami, and Miami is ground zero for sea level rise in the world. And that was one of the things as I was organizing across the city, that was one of the main topics most folks were talking about: disaster, sea level rise, displacement. And it was only right as an organizer that I stepped up and learned how this was impacting our communities. And I took it on and I ain't stopped yet. But you know, I met you and I'm like, it's another black woman in climate. So how did you get here?
It was Hurricane Katrina, no doubt. Hurricane Katrina hit in 2005. It changed my life. It took out my community. It took out communities across 3 states. And I've never seen any devastation like that before. And I hope nobody ever has to experience it. And 5 years after Katrina, we had the BP oil drilling disaster. And I began to really connect the dots between what we're digging out of the ground and what the consequences of that are going to be, which is that extreme weather, more extreme weather, bigger, stronger storms. This is my fight. This is our fight. This is a fight for Black lives. So when we talk about the Red, Black, and Green New Deal Initiative, it's important to understand the arc of what we're talking about and the details, the pillars of what we're talking about. One of the main frames of understanding Black lives and climate change is really understanding extraction, awakening, and liberation. Extraction really begins with understanding the philosophy of extraction. The philosophy of extraction really showed itself at the beginning of this country, where Black people were extracted from the continent of Africa and used for labor that built the wealth of this country. That same philosophy of extraction is what we see with the extraction of fossil fuels and the use of these products that is now destroying our planet. There was a point where people really began to awaken in this country. Of course, the fight against these Jim Crow laws, of course, the fights that have gone on for so long. But in the civil rights era, we really began to see people step up, not just for the injustice that was happening to Black communities, but really starting to look at even the environmental injustices and the environmental racism that was going on in our community. So a product of the civil rights movement is this fight for environmental justice. We see an awakening of our people who understand that our environment is as important as our jobs, as our income, as our health. And so now as we move forward, really critiquing that philosophy of extraction and understanding that we are part of a longer trajectory of struggle that is really about our awakening, we move now together with Black people around the globe toward our liberation. The climate fight is a part of our liberation. We have to understand that we can't get free until we address this climate crisis. We will not survive unless we address this climate crisis as part of our strategy to address this racial injustice that we're seeing across our globe. This is our time, this is our moment, and this framework is what we really want to root ourselves in.
Water is a precious and limited resource. It makes up 60% of our bodies. And while it covers 71% of the Earth's surface, only 0.5% of fresh water on the planet is attainable. Without water, life ceases to exist. The climate crisis transforms life-giving water into one of the biggest threats to Black lives. Climate change is causing extreme imbalances, from increased flooding, torrential rains, ice storms, and rising sea levels to drought-like conditions. As a result, major cities in the U.S. and around the world are struggling to provide water to their populations. More than 2 million Americans live without access to safe drinking water and sanitation. Flint, Detroit, Dallas, Houston, and Jackson are devastating examples of economic and climate disasters in our cities. In defense of Black lives, we are forced into the fight to protect access to water. This is why the Movement for Black Lives has created the Red, Black, and Green New Deal Initiative. We will not sacrifice black lives or accept false solutions that perpetuate unjust social and economic systems. Climate justice is racial justice.
Wow, what a great video and a compelling reminder of just how precious water is. You know, I mean, we need it. Water is life, and we usually don't think much about it until we have not enough or we have too much. It reminds me of New Orleans and South Louisiana in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. That storm flooded 80% of the city of New Orleans, and it took out 3 states with a tidal surge coming off the Gulf that was 30 feet high. I mean, it was something you'll never forget. And if you think about all that water, and then you think about the fact that in the United States, there's over 2 million people who do not have access to clean and affordable drinking water. I mean, this is really an important issue for us to really get our heads around and to really connect to this climate crisis. And we haven't even begun to talk about sea level rise. I mean, in Louisiana, we're losing land at one of the fastest rates on the planet. And people don't even know that. We got the first federal dollars to relocate communities because of sea level rise. This is serious. It's happening now, and we've got to do something about it.
Yeah, it's such a huge issue that we face regionally, but also nationally. I think about Florida often and how South Florida is ground zero for sea level rise in the world. And how like the water coming into our communities and the saltwater intrusion is attacking our freshwater aquifer. So like our drinking water is under attack. And it's also causing a lot of displacement very rapidly. And the locals and everybody calls it climate gentrification. So I think about the black people in Detroit and in Flint and how they don't have access to clean water and affordable water. And meanwhile, these nasty, dirty energy companies are using fresh drinking water to do dirty business, right? So let's hear a little bit about how energy connects to climate and how it impacts black lives.
Energy powers our advancement. Since the start of the Industrial Revolution, our society has been designed to depend on the energy provided by fossil fuels. The extraction and processing of oil, gas, and coal has created a climate crisis that disproportionately impacts Black and Indigenous communities. Burning fossil fuels has caused higher than average temperatures and more frequent extreme weather events globally. These climate changes have resulted in a higher level of energy consumption that strains already struggling systems. We want reliable, sustainable energy that does not damage the environment or produce harmful impacts on marginalized communities. Our approach should be to divest from fossil fuels and invest in sustainable, renewable energy infrastructures. Our government should be a proponent and facilitator of investments in all forms of sustainable, renewable energy. Because Black communities are the most impacted by climate change, any conversation about climate should center Black lives. This is why the Movement for Black Lives has created the Red, Black, and Green New Deal initiative. We will not sacrifice Black lives or accept false solutions that perpetuate unjust social and economic systems. Climate justice is racial justice.
Another deep video. Another deep video. And you know, I think energy for me is one of like the most compelling pillars. And honestly, it's one of them that I don't have that much knowledge about. And I like to be true about it. But the great thing about it is that the RBG New Deal, we could learn all about it and build solutions from it. We could look at our energy system in a lot of different ways. It's extractive and it's destructive. The history behind it is so horrible and it runs so deep that it's mind-boggling. From the west coast of Africa to the Caribbean to the US. Hell, this pattern is the reason why we're here in the first place. So what do we mean by no false solutions? Things like carbon capture and sequestration. We can learn all about all of these things through the RBG New Deal.
That's right. And really what we're going to do is take the time to learn how the philosophy of extraction is really at the root of our economic system and the root of this climate crisis. I mean, we've really got to think about the way we consume as Americans. And we can't talk about population control when it comes to consumption because just one American consumes as much energy as 370 people in Ethiopia. This is really about American consumption. This is about the way Americans are driving this global market, and this is causing an imbalance across our entire planet. The goal we have to have is to divest from fossil fuels. We have to get rid of this, and we have to get rid of it immediately. And this is not about taking something away from people's comfort. This is about us saving ourselves, saving the planet. We really need to be protecting our natural resources. Our natural resources, like our trees, actually help to pull the carbon and the greenhouse gases from the air. If we keep burning the Amazon and taking down forests and tearing up wetlands, we're harming ourselves. We're not just advancing development. So these are the things we really have to understand. We have to take the time to get into it, to learn. This is a little bit about science, but it's mostly about justice, and it's about what we want for ourselves. The best place to start in understanding the transformation needed in our energy system is to really reform our relationship to the land. We're going to have to re-indigenize ourselves. And I think we should just take a look at how land connects to the broader conversation around climate and Black lives.
You know, if we're being honest, I have a need to feel and to create and then to be felt. Growing up where I grew up in Pineville, in the low country of South Carolina, water had such a profound impact on our traditions and the culture, well, you know, what we ate, how we lived. Water is the life force, is rebirth and renewal. You know, it's real spiritual. And water also takes the form that it needs to take in order to do what it's purposed to do. And as I'm here in Charleston, in a city that's literally underwater, a city that in many ways has been the gateway to the Black experience in America, with so many of its people still under the thumb of oppression, there is no more perfect metaphor. For me, it's not an absence of fear. It's embracing the fear, using it to go forward. It's not an absence of love, pain, strength, or vulnerability, but it's embracing all of it, owning all of it, and using it to push forward. It's the spirit of creativity, collaboration, and community. It's restlessness and rage, poetry, jazz. It's healing. It's beautiful. It's Black. And it's political. Like me. Like my people. And that's a Water album.
Climate change threatens Black lives. Our nation's infrastructure, the roads and bridges that get us to safety, the pipelines and facilities that run basic services to our homes are all impacted by climate change. Our land, our very foundation is at stake. Every year, the cost of housing, food, and basic services increases. Meanwhile, few of us are able to establish the kind of generational wealth that would allow us to escape and recover from climate disasters, which are becoming more frequent and more extreme. Despite being the least responsible for causing this imbalance, we are the ones at risk. We are the ones left to die. Public lands and natural resources, Black communities, as well as the lands we occupy, must be protected and prepared for a new climate reality. This is why the movement for Black Lives has created the Red, Black, and Green New Deal initiative. We will not sacrifice Black lives or accept false solutions that perpetuate unjust social and economic systems. Climate justice is racial justice.
Wow, that was such an important video about land, and we really have to honor this place where we live, and it holds us, it keeps us here. I mean, we depend on it. You know, I live in South Louisiana, and our land is so precious. And I come from a family that has worked in oil and gas. My dad, my uncles, my cousins, they all worked in the industry that's contributing to us losing our land, to this climate crisis. It's really a tough place for workers to be. But if you think about where this started from, I mean, this is oil and gas industry and refineries. They're literally placed on top of old plantations. You can find drilling sites, refineries, plastics plants, all of these things are on old plantations, and the communities that surround them are black. I mean, this is being done, this is an economic system. This is harm being done to our communities for generations without stopping, without pausing. Our workers are on the front lines, and for a just transition, we're gonna need to invest in a sustainable economy as opposed to a dirty one. We're really gonna have to invest in jobs, job training, transitions for the workers who are on the front lines of this transformation that we need to see in our society. And we're gonna have to have investment the size of the problem. We're gonna have to make sure that workers have their rights protected and really think about, you know, how these things go together.
Absolutely, and that's one thing that I'm so excited about as it relates to the RBG New Deal, because we are going to make a bold statement on these things, and our initiative and our goals are not going to sacrifice any of Black lives. And I think about us as stewards of land, right? And Black people have always been stewards of land, right? And we've always been at the center of building power, especially around labor. Here in this colonized land, the fight for fair wages, right? The unfair treatment and the unsafe working environments that our people work in, and also the inaccessibility to health benefits for our communities as they work. And I think about sustainable transitions when I think about those issues. And speaking of workers, that takes us right into our next pillar, labor.
We are living in a new climate reality. Our economic system is designed to minimize the cost of labor while maximizing profit. The value of goods and services is more important than the human beings producing them. This racist and inequitable system stands in the way of a just transition to a renewable energy economy. The climate crisis is highlighting disparities in health, poverty, education, and worker rights. These systemic issues prevent marginalized communities from preparing for the changes happening now. Our agricultural and domestic workers need to be protected from this exclusionary system. Black and Indigenous people want the same access to advancement as anyone else. We want a fair wage that allows us to afford health care and to prepare ourselves for climate disasters that are becoming more frequent and more extreme. A thriving, healthy, and safe community and families are the fruits of our labor. This is why the Movement for Black Lives has created the Red, Black, and Green New Deal Initiative. We will not sacrifice Black lives or accept false solutions that perpetuate unjust social and economic systems. Climate justice is racial justice.
So we just saw a video about labor, right? And it's so interesting to me how the world looks at labor. Unfortunately, it's tied to extractive processes. It encourages greed and exploitation. It's a whole lot of work, but it's a whole lot of people willing to do the work to move the ball forward, right? You know what else is a part of labor?
What?
Care work, right? It's usually unseen, it's devalued, work that a lot of women do, domestic work, home health work, and child care work, right? But what's interesting is it is actually the tool that we need to do to push the ball forward on this fight for climate justice.
That's right. I mean, it is already a sustainable economy. It's got low greenhouse gas emissions, right? If you're at the house, if you're at the home, this is not, you're not on the street everywhere. And a lot of our care workers are the users of public transportation and mass transportation. We have to see more of this. And we really have to see that, we really have to understand that we don't have another option. The international clock says we've got less than 9 years before we reach a point of no return on this global climate crisis. Less than 9 years. I mean, think about how old you're going to be in 9 years, and we will be at the point of no return at that time. We've got to do this. We've got to do it now. And we've got to address this climate crisis. And one more thing. We've got to pay our fair share of the damage that has already been done to the globe. There are already countries moving capitals, moving whole cities, moving people, because the climate crisis is not something in the future, it's already here. And we have to pay our fair share as one of the few countries who's actually responsible for putting all these greenhouse gases into the air and accelerating the climate crisis. Meanwhile, other countries aren't putting anything into the air, but they're feeling the worst impacts. We've got to really pay our fair share. Let's talk a little bit more about racialized capitalism and the role of economy in this climate crisis. Let's take a look at economy.
Our economy is in a state of flux. Climate change is forcing us to rethink how energy powers our economy. Extreme weather events, which are caused by a dependence on fossil fuels, have exposed our nation's vulnerabilities. Corporations that have profited from fossil fuels have created and accelerated our current climate crisis. Black and indigenous communities suffer the most and benefit the least from the use of fossil fuels. Disparities in income, education, healthcare, and more have unveiled the long-held realities that systemic racism has led to a disproportionate impact of climate on communities of color. While these disparities are threats to our survival, climate change is a threat multiplier that exacerbates the complex set of issues that marginalized communities already face. Climate injustice is birthed from this toxic blend of overlapping realities. This is why the movement for Black Lives has created the Red, Black, and Green New Deal initiative. We will not sacrifice Black lives or accept false solutions that perpetuate unjust social and economic systems. Climate justice is racial justice.
Our economy is rooted in the philosophy of extraction and devaluation. It started with the extraction of Black people from the African continent and devaluing us and our bodies to that of less than human. Chattel is what they called it. We're going to have the courage to confront this racialized capitalism, and we're going to have to have a new system that addresses the global climate crisis. As more people speak up, you know what we're seeing? We're seeing more laws that actually silence you. We're watching these indigenous water protectors stand against pipelines and transnational corporations. And now, I bet if you check your state, you'll see that there's an anti-protest law that's either already in law or it's about to be in law, especially where you have folks who are fighting the fossil fuel industry. This is something we really got to get our heads around. This is not just about climate, it's not just about environment. This is about our democratic right, our constitutional right to speak, and it's being challenged because folks want to put profit over people.
It sounds like to me, we need to make a big change. A transition is just one piece, but we need to make a transformation on the concept of democracy. The Red, Black, and Green New Deal is a national initiative, right? That is going to use bottom-up organizing, right? Political education, and direct action organizing to advance a radical Black climate agenda, right? It's needed. And it's going to prohibit any sacrificing of Black lives, right? It is time for us to take a big stand, right? We will not sit back no longer and allow for our communities to be targeted, right? Forgotten about, sacrificed in this global fight for climate justice. This framework will inform, right? And it will be developed on a national scale, right? In a strong statement on our values, priorities in our communities to advance climate justice for Black lives.
All right, well, let's do it. I mean, we should just have everybody join us.
Yeah.
We should rise like the seas.
That's right.
We should stand up and fight.
Yep.
We should fight for Black lives.
And it's a whole bunch of room left in the ranks, y'all. So y'all come join us.
Come on and join us. Come on and join us. All right. Excellent. Excellent, V.
Yeah. I'm back for the land. Yeah, back for the land. Yeah, back for the land. Yeah. I'm coming back for the land that my grandmama and my granddaddy put a house on. I'm coming back for the land in exchange for the fam, I'ma put the whole South on. I'm coming back for that bag that you owe me, and I ain't coming back by my lonely. I'm back for the makers, I'm plotting on the plot by your neighbors. I'm back for the land with a handful of bands, yeah, I'm back for the land. From the backwoods of the cat, come back to claim what's ours. Give me flowers, the witch doctor pull roots and grind powder to flood our skies with the cries that grow louder. We put blood in the field to yield grain, and we water the seed, and the seed reveal pain. Flower buds were loveless, it's been a long road to hoe, but please know we all came for justice. I rain danced on the mainland, the stage hands came for a drama that they never seen. This is evergreen, you can feel it in the balcony, the mezzanine. Tragedy, agony, end scene. I emerged from the fall going hard with a monologue. This ain't church, this cathedral. The Giancarlo Esposito, the griot. I'm echoing a hymn for my people. I said I'm coming back for the land that my grandmama and my granddaddy put a house on. I'm coming back for the land in exchange for the fam, I'ma put the whole South on. I'm coming back for that bag that you owe me, and I ain't coming back by my lonely. I'm back for the makers, I'm plotting on the plot by your neighbors. I'm back for the land with a handful of bands, yeah, back for the land. From the backwoods of the cat, I'm back to claim what's ours. Give me flowers, I painted the canvas, I'm kicking the melody. I came back for land deeds and legacies. I was born by the river with a flow and a fade and a whole tribe of my ancestors. I do this for my grandpa with his peace pipe and his favorite chair, reclining, watching his westerns. I came back for my lineage, unblemished interior in the villages. I got a myriad of superior materials, I'm a serial liberator for lost children. You know we reap cause we sewed the cloth different, the work still speaking in tongues, we beating the drums, the real ones follow me. I'm pulling up for the property, motherfucker, talk to me properly. I'm coming back for the land that my grandmama and my granddaddy put a house on. I'm coming back for the land in exchange for the fam, I'ma put the whole South on. I'm coming back for that bag that you owe me, and I ain't coming back by my lonely. I'm back for the makers, I'm plotting on the plot by your neighbors. I'm back for the land with a handful of bands, yeah, I'm back for the land. From the backwoods of the cat, I'm back to claim what's ours. Give me flowers, I'm the black sparrow adorned in 24 karat gold with a lighter to the barrels of all the phoenix. I'm in tune with my spiritual self, I'm trying to burn it all down, redistribute the wealth. I'd rather vibrate than gyrate when it's hot stakes. I don't migrate, I radicalize primates. Supreme literature still reek of my signature. Triple beam, lyrical dream, police picking up. More heaters for listeners, more freedom for prisoners. Culture requirements for the gentrifying visitors. I emerged from the fall going hard with a monologue. This ain't church, this cathedral. The Giancarlo Esposito, the griot. I'm echoing a hymn for my people. I'm coming back for the land that my grandmama and my granddaddy put a house on. I'm coming back for the land in exchange for the fam, I'ma put the whole South on. I'm coming back for that bag that you owe me, and I ain't coming back by my lonely. I'm back for the makers, I'm plotting on the plot by your neighbors. I'm back for the land with a handful of bands, yeah, I'm back for the land. 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 Yeah, I'm back for the land.
History would bear it out that at one time, we was the major generation to hand down generational wealth, you know, as they handed it down to me, and I'm looking forward to handing it down to my sons. And because the reason why Pequot is so complicated, they did everything but return to us the land, because then you was truly free.
Our system of government is designed to represent and protect its citizens. We need a fair system that prioritizes not only our civil rights, but our human rights. These include the right to vote in a free and fair election and the right to be involved in any policy decisions that impact our community. The impact of climate change has highlighted the failure of our government to protect the most vulnerable. Too often, these communities are disproportionately Black, brown, and indigenous peoples. Our system of government should work for all of its people. Our government should be proponents of and facilitators of investments in all forms of sustainable, renewable energy. Because Black communities are the most impacted by climate change, any conversation about climate should center Black lives. This is why the Movement for Black Lives has created the Red, Black, and Green New Deal Initiative. We will not sacrifice Black lives or accept false solutions that perpetuate unjust social and economic systems. Climate justice is racial justice.
So great. Thank y'all so much for joining us. My name is Colette P. Sean Battle, and you've seen me in the pre-records, but now I am joining you live. And I just want to say before we get started, thank you to the artists who've contributed to the presentation tonight. Artist Romero Burney coming out of Mississippi and Benny Starr coming out of South Carolina. It's been really great to have art infused with this work. And we've gone over 6 pillars today: water, energy, land, labor, economy, and democracy. And on democracy, we want to have this live panel presentation. It's my honor to call in my sister girls to have a conversation about how climate change connects to the fight for Black lives, but also connects to the broader question of democracy. So I want to introduce to you my girl, Valencia Gunder, who is our national organizing lead for the Red, Black, and Green New Deal team. Valencia is coming out of Florida and is also hopefully one day going to run for president. I'm going to run her campaign. Next, I want to introduce you to Tenjiwe McHarris. Tenjiwe is on the leadership team of the Rising Majority, coming into us from New York. And if you don't know, now you know. This is one of the best brains we've got out there working and fighting for Black lives. And finally, I want to introduce Kaya Chatterjee, the executive director of the U.S. Climate Action Network, one of my favorite organizations in the nation, also the organization with the largest number of climate organizations working together, the largest network. And it connects to an international network of folks, of frontline folks, of people who care about the climate, who are working around the globe. Ladies, it's great to have all of y'all here. You look gorgeous. Thank you for joining me. I want to jump right in. We've seen some really powerful videos. We've heard some powerful conversation. We've even had some art. We want to really talk about the state of things right now. We've come out of a tough few years in the United States, and it's connected to what some would define as an even tougher global reality. From the Philippines to Brazil to India to the United States, the goal of democracy is being challenged. My first question this evening is, can you give us your read on the state of democracy globally at the moment, just from your perspective? Tenjiwe, let me start with you and see what you have to say on this one.
Great. Thank you, Colette. Can you hear me?
I can.
Hopefully you can. It's such an honor to just be here and to just be a witness to the work and the leadership of folks like you and Valencia. So just really honored to be here to talk about this work and the connection that democracy has to all of this. But first, I just want to say the world is experiencing multiple truths, and they include the convergence of crisis after crisis, but they also include the presence of uprising after uprising. So I want to talk about what we are up against, because how our governments are structured is directly connected to how our economy is structured and what lives get devalued in the pursuit of profit and power. And so if it's okay, I just want to start there and just center in sort of what is the world up against. And then obviously I want to start with the issue of poverty and poverty in relationship to economic violence and the consequences of living under a global rule called racial capitalism. And what does this mean? What does this look like in life, in our experiences? Well, using Brazil as an example, this is a country that has been deeply impacted by COVID-19. Over 400,000 people have lost their lives, while tens of millions of people are going hungry. And I believe the hunger has almost doubled since 2019, while the world is increasing in the amount of billionaires that exist. There are 20 new billionaires in Brazil than existed before COVID. This is not just about COVID, this is about economic violence. We've witnessed one of the hardest, most heartbreaking years of our lives. 3.3 million people have died. 150 million people more people have been forced into extreme poverty, while we're watching the billionaires in the United States alone have increased their wealth by $1.3 trillion. So this is what it means to live under racial capitalism. And we all know that Black people are literally dying every day because of it. And obviously, I have to talk briefly about state violence and political repression, from the killing of Black people by the police, anti-Blackness in Colombia and in Brazil, to what we see happening to Palestinians right now. State violence, repression, militarism is not just a challenge, it's a crisis, and it's deeply connected to economic violence. And of course, what we're all talking about here in terms of this destruction and harm done to the earth, from extraction to deforestation to the polluting of our air and the earth's rapidly changing climate. All of this is connected to the absence of radical democracy. And we often talk about democracy. Democracy means rule by the people, a government that is in the hands of the majority, the masses, either directly through their ability to directly impact decisions or laws, or indirectly through representation. But I actually want to talk about also radical democracy, which many of us will argue is what we need, challenges neoliberal concepts of democracy, and demands that in the path to gain clarity and consensus, the views and positions of the most oppressed and marginalized of society are not suppressed. In this way, it advances a form of democracy that is about equality, equity, justice, and freedom. And so I'm going to wrap up soon, but I want to say that what we are seeing in many places around the world is either the tightening of the fist through authoritarian rule, or bourgeoisie democracy, which only exists to serve the interests of corporations or the wealthy and not the masses. And what we see happening in the US, while we talk about the corporate capture of our democracy as we live under bourgeoisie democracy, we're seeing rights being stripped away from us from the right. 250 laws are being proposed in 43 states that are designed to rip away what our movements and our ancestors and our elders have fought and won. And many of them, if they will pass, will take decades to undo. And so we're watching all of this happening around the world in terms of the threat of people's rights to impact the laws and rules that impact their lives. And this is taking in the form of political violence, disinformation, anti-voter laws. So what is this telling us as I finish up? If we are to fight for what our communities need, if we're going to fight climate change for the respect of our people and the planet, we must also contend with how the right is constantly trying to undermine any access that we have to real democracy. And as a movement, we must center fighting for a form of democracy that will allow us to not only keep our people alive, but fight for structural change. There's no separating any of what is happening to our communities and the planet from governance. On the road to self-governance and self-determination is clarity about radical democracy and the function it serves in our lives. All of this, I know, is a lot, but as we see the escalation of threats, we also are a witness to the uprisings and the growing of our global movement. Our movements are getting stronger and clear. We are clear about the fight ahead. We are clear that we must intersectional. And I do believe that there is not just victory ahead, but our movements are getting more powerful and stronger than ever before.
Hey, I believe it. If I didn't believe it before, I sure do believe it now, Tenjiwe. Thank you. The only thing more impressive than your answer was Vanya doing the ASL. Shout out to Vanya. Thank you so much for keeping up with all of that. That was impressive. And Tenjiwe, I think you've given us all a lot to think about and a beautiful connection to what's happening around the globe. Kaya, I want to throw this question to you. You're in a particular position in the United States, the U.S. Climate Action Network, the largest network of climate organizations connected to other climate organizations around the globe. What's your read on the state of democracy right now, especially from this climate perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to start where Tenjiwe left off with that excellent answer. And first, I just want to say how honored I am to be in the presence of the brilliance of Tenjiwe, Colette, and Valencia this evening. Really, what we see with this COVID crisis is just a reflection of the lack of global solidarity that we've seen in the climate crisis as well, and people are dying, right? And so, my family, my extended family are from India. We see in India a serious threat on democracy. We see basically a fascist government. We see this extreme domestic inequality. We see people dying. We see the United States putting things, for a long time, things just changing under pressure, but putting things like patents and corporate profits ahead of saving people's lives. And this global structure is deeply problematic. And in India, it's playing out with Hindu nationalists. Here it's playing out with white nationalists. But it's the same system of neoliberalism where we have these white nationalists aligned with these billionaires in the fossil fuel industry and in other industries, aligned with people who are essentially like imperialists. They really want us to be in a constant state of war. And that alignment is what our movements are starting to take on. And you see that in the form of farmers in India. You see that here in the United States with uprisings against police killings of Black people, with uprisings on across a range of issues. And right now, we're really at a crossroads, as a world. Are we really going to embrace this radical democracy that Thanjiwe was talking about? Or are we going to allow basically a corporate capture of our planet? And that's the decision that's in front of us. And we have this incredible history, in the United States, in India, in every country in the world, of people uprising and actually deeply changing things, really changing the structure of things, we as a people have taken on colonialism, and we have so much power, but it's going to take us being in solidarity and using that power if we really want to claim that democracy is on the rise, that democracy is how we are going to decide things, and that we are going to actually give the microphone and the power to the people who we have made vulnerable here and around the world through policy. We have made them vulnerable. Sometimes we talk about vulnerable people. It's like they didn't get that way by accident. Policy made them vulnerable, and policy can make them not vulnerable. And that's why I'm so excited about the Red, Black, and Green New Deal.
Wow, policy made them vulnerable, and policy cannot make them vulnerable. Listen, I'm ready. It sounds like we need to get Black folks, not just in this work to get ready, but really in this policy game around what our governments are doing. So thank you so much for that, Kea. And I wrote down some words: neoliberalism, imperialism. I heard these words when I was in college. I might have to go redefine them, look them up again. And I want to encourage those of you who are listening, take the time and really understand what's being said here. And it's okay to not know all of the words, but not okay to continue not knowing these words. So take some time, do some study, and let's get up on this. And Valencia, your work is so often with the community at the level, at the grassroots level. What's your sense of democracy from where you sit in South Florida and the work you're doing nationally?
Yeah, thanks, Colette, and I'm super happy to be here. We made it, launch day. But I think about democracy as an organizer, and also just as a returning citizen. I just got my rights back in 2018 to participate in democracy after doing years of organizing work with all of these amazing organizations across the state. And then just how we're seeing immediately how it's being challenged. HB1 just was passed here in the state of Florida, and that puts a lot of people in harm's way. And I think about how based off of the definition that Thanjiwe just gave us, right now, our country, hell, the world is not even functioning in that capacity. The work is happening, right? We see communities, shout out to the folks in Ferguson and St. Louis, they fighting back, right? They are doing the organizing work. Georgia, Texas, Louisiana, everybody, they're doing the work, the hard work of using organizing to advance our democracy. And then when we get into legislative session, right, they use policy to roll it back. And they use these resolutions and amendments to literally push against the work that we're doing. So one thing I just want people to know, especially local organizers, the work works, right? The organizing works, democracy works, and we have to keep fighting. And they're pushing back, right? It's not a coincidence that they did 43 states, right? Over 200 pieces of legislation. They are afraid of the power that we're building, and we deserve to be able to participate in democracy, to have our tax dollars work for us, and to have our leadership filing and moving legislation and policy that is actually going to impact the mass of the people and not just a few.
I mean, these are the words, and this is the truth coming out. And I think, really getting our folks to work for us is going to be the fight. We've got elections coming. These things don't stop. It's time for folks to really get involved in who's representing us and what's being said about what we want at our community level. This was really great. A question about democracy. Thank y'all. I do want to just shift us a little bit to 2020. 2020, we saw the largest rights-based sustained protest in U.S. history. And in my neck of the woods, we also saw the most active hurricane season ever in history. 2020, we had the most hurricanes, and we also saw these uprisings. And when you put all of this together with COVID, you really start thinking about how these moments in time are really coming together. And that's really my question for you. How do we link? And I think we've touched on it a little bit, but let's go a little deeper into this climate moment and what it is and what it means and what it really means and how it connects to Black lives and that moment and what it really means. Kaya, I want to start with you, and I want to ask you to help us understand this climate moment. Help us understand what it means for humanity, what it means for our communities, and then how do you see this connecting with this movement for Black lives?
Yeah, thanks, Calais. I think part of this comes back to one of those 6 pillars that you talked about, energy. So when we look at at how we got here, how did we get to the point with a record number of hurricanes, with whole communities burning down? You know, we were warning about it for years, but we got there because essentially in this country and around the world, there was a willingness by people who had power to sacrifice Black communities. And so I don't actually believe that we would have had a climate crisis if not for racial injustice. I don't know that there is a rich white community that would have taken a coal-fired power plant next to it. I don't know that there is a rich white community that would have accepted a pipeline that might explode. I don't know that those things would have happened at all. It might have been when President Carter started talking about solar, we would have gone that way. Because rich white communities made it pretty clear they didn't want this dirty stuff. And so what happened was that people with power looked around and they said, where can we put it? And they put it in Black communities. Without racism, we would not have a climate crisis. Without colonialism, we would not have a climate crisis. It's that simple. And so racism brought us the climate crisis. And then when you look at who is actually getting the most hurt, when communities are flooding, when fires are hitting communities, whatever your local climate impact is, you look at who's getting hurt, and you hear these stories, right? When the fires were happening, where people were still forcing their landscapers to come out for their houses, even though communities were burning down. You see people can't get out of their communities even when they know hurricanes are coming for a variety of reasons. You know, the people who are hit first and worst again, are the same people who, as a society, this country was willing to sacrifice to build up a dirty energy system. So it's a double whammy. It's racism that brought us the climate crisis, and the way that it is playing out is not equal. It is highly unequal the way these things are playing out, and the reality is that Black communities in this country are hit worse for a second time when it comes to this issue.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking about the realities of the hurricane season last year, you know, and even in Katrina, with the floods that come, then we flood the refineries and these toxic areas. So the water is not just sea salt water. Now it's full of toxins. I mean, they're literally full of carcinogens and things that harm us. And then that seeps back into the ground, right, as the water goes down. This only happens where you have this concentration of industry. So climate plus industry is really harming Black lives. And I just want to say to the folks fighting in Cancer Valley and to the folks fighting in Alabama, in South Alabama, like, we see the fight, we see the struggle, and we stand with you. And Valencia, I want to ask you, what does the climate crisis look like in Florida? And how does climate and Black lives really fit together that you see in your work in South Florida and around the nation?
Yeah, I mean, it looks a damn mess like it look everywhere else. I think about the extended heat days that we have here in South Florida. I know many people may think it doesn't get cold in South Florida, but it used to, and it no longer does. And the extreme weather events, sunny day flooding, climate gentrification, and how this is impacting immigration laws and how it is impacting Black immigrants. Black women are being impacted and their homes are being impacted. And I think about how our government is using this as a tool to punish people. I just was thinking of our brothers and sisters who, come from the Caribbean islands over to the United States, and they are living literally on sugarcane plantations by Dixie Sugar, I'll say their name. And our people are being entrapped and mistreated because they don't speak English or they don't have certain documents of citizenship. And then thinking about our under-resourced populations, the unsheltered communities being exposed to these extreme weather events, right? And I don't know about y'all, but like on Christmas Day, 95 degrees is extreme weather, right? Your community flooding on a random rainy day is extreme weather, and people are being impacted by this all the time. And we're already seeing the death toll go up because people are dying from what I would call climate deaths. But of course, they would never name those things. And I also just want to uplift the movement across the state of Florida, right? Who's taking a huge stand on this, fighting against energy companies, right? Toxic waste being poured into our fresh water, fighting against big water companies that's trying to buy up the Everglades, right? Standing in solidarity with the Seminole tribe and the Miccosukee tribe, and figuring out ways of solutions. And I just think about, and I worry about it the most when we're heading into disaster, right? I always talk about climate as a threat multiplier. So we have under-resourced populations that are literally under stress all the time, right? State violence, right? No access to food, no access to education. They don't have access to evacuate. And then the shocker hits them, right? A hurricane, a tornado, or earthquake, right? And these type of things end up happening to our communities often, right? And to prepare for disaster, even if you can, is a lot of money. And a lot of our folks are already dealing with the stress of things. So I have a lot of hope in the movement in Florida. But I also am very concerned and worried about the extent of the damage that's already done and who will actually be able to survive.
That's real. That's real. The extent of the damage is a real question. And Tenjiwe, I want to ask you the same question from the exact opposite perspective, right? We saw Black uprisings or uprisings in solidarity for Black lives with Black lives last year. We didn't just see them in the US, we saw them around the globe. How do you see this moment around Black lives connecting to climate? Are folks making the connection? Are there impacts that you can see? What's your read on this moment?
I mean, I feel like in some ways they are. I feel like our elders and our ancestors and so many people are feeling and understanding the connection. But I also think it's because of the leadership within Black movement from folks like you, like Colette and you, Valencia, who are making sure that we understand the connections. And I feel like what folks are growing to, like what we're understanding is like it's all connected to the same source. So the death of our people by the police, the caging of our people is directly connected to rapidly changing rapidly changing climate. But it's all coming from the same source. The fact that half of the world's people live on less than $5.50 a day is all coming from the same source. It is power consolidated for a small few who are determined to accumulate wealth and increase their power. This means death for Black people. This means death for Indigenous people, and it means destruction of the earth. And the truth is that they're not mythical creatures. We know who are doing it. We know who's the leader of these multinational corporations. We know who are accumulating wealth. We could see the billionaire list. It's growing. And so there is it is coming from the same source. But I have to say, we are witnessing two things in this moment. And that's why I appreciate this question so much, because it's talking about why is all these things happening at the same time? I believe humanity is at a profound moment in the history of human civilization. We're facing both an acceleration of corporate power, a level of wealth accumulation we've never seen before, a heightened level of militarism and repression violence on one hand. But on the other, we're also seeing a growing opposition to that, where watching and witnessing a growing movement. On the other hand, there is a growing appetite in each corner of the world for transformation, for a profound change. And I believe what we are experiencing is a rejection of not just sort of these crumbs and these reforms that don't speak to suffering or structural change, but a rejection of power being organized in the way it does, in terms of a rejection of the source to all of these issues. So we're watching people wanting a profound change. This means I also feel like we're in a moment that is defining. So it's no coincidence that you have killing after killing after killing of Black life from Brazil to Nigeria to the United States, the highest number of hurricanes, rapidly changing weather patterns, and simultaneously, we also have waves of uprisings like I shared before. So all of these are just sort of happening at the same time. And I really do believe if we're watching closely over the past sort of 10 years, whether it's Brazil, Colombia, Hong Kong, India, global protests on the rise, and they're going to continue to be on the rise. So as it's escalate, as a threat is escalating on the one hand, we also must recognize that our power, our strength is not just in the millions. We're at the point where in the billions. The challenge ahead of us is how organized can we get? They are not smarter than us. They definitely are not more than us. We actually have victory on the horizon. Our job here is to have the level of coordination that is required in this moment. So I don't want to go too deep into it, and there's more I wanted to say, but I feel like our duty here is to understand that we must no longer fight for the reforms that don't address suffering or structural change. These are crumbs designed to maintain the way the world is structured. We will be passing down to our children the same problems we have been fighting to resolve. Also, we will not win without each other. So this is the question of coordination and organization across the world. What we are up against is significant, but it doesn't mean that our ability to achieve actual wins is impossible. But it requires us to build global movements where Black and indigenous leadership is critical. And I'm gonna say this again, there is no powerful global movement without Black leadership, period, from Brazil to Colombia to the United States. And this will take each of us. This is about us sort of really stepping into our leadership so that we can be the movement that I think that we're determined to be, and that not just our ancestors are demanding of us, but I think those yet coming are requiring of us in this moment.
Ashe. That sounded like truth to me. And just thinking about the coordination, this means we're going to have to build some relationships, build some community, build some trust. I've got a new friend named Rodney who's on ASL. Shout out. He's keeping up with all the fire. And I just want to make sure that we're all talking to our new friends. And so my last question as we wrap up is really, as we look at this combination of COVID-19, racial solidarity uprisings, the clear acceleration of the climate crisis. I mean, this has a lot of people in a state of rethinking themselves, rethinking who they are and how they are in this world. What would you say to that neighbor of yours about this moment in time and their role? Valencia, let me start with you.
Well, I talk to my 82-year-old neighbor every week anyway, so this is a great question. I'll tell my neighbors, and I tell them all the time, one, climate change is real. It is real as fuck, y'all. It is not a fake thing. It is not something some scientists are sitting in the back room making up. It is a thing that people are feeling, that they are dealing with and having to respond to every day. Also, climate is a Black people issue, y'all. It's not just white tree huggers and hippies that care about the earth, right? Black people been caring about land. We've been stewarding the land, and it is something, and it is real. And I also will tell my neighbor, hey, it's work that you can do. I always think that people get afraid because the climate crisis is so big. They don't understand what they can do right in their own homes, right? So I always tell my neighbors, keep your community clean. Watch your consumption, right? Watch how much gas you're using. Try to carpool. Try to show up to your commission meetings. Those are the type of conversations I have with folks all the time, and prepare. We know the disaster is coming. It is unfortunate, right? But hurricane season comes, tornado season comes, and the South needs to start preparing for snowstorms, right? We have to start preparing. We cannot wait all the time until the crisis hits us. And I know it's hard to prepare, right? But that's why we can do it as a community. We can work together because we are our own first responders anyway. Nobody else coming to save us. We help each other and we save each other. So get into the ranks, y'all.
Get into the ranks. I like how you're going. The 80-year-old neighbor gets told to come into the ranks. That means there's room for everybody. Respect and shout out to the neighbor. Tenjiwe, just asking, your neighbor, how are you? How would you give them advice about this moment and who they could be in this moment?
It's just thank you for this. I can listen to Valencia talk all day, so I just appreciate. I feel like that we all have a responsibility in this, and I feel like I've learned that too from you, Colette, in talking about it's not just about what we demand, but as individuals, we have a particular responsibility in this moment, and that our work and our job is to choose courage and hope, to lean into imagination of what's possible and do it with urgency. And I think to move away from this space of being so overwhelmed by everything and so stoked with fear, the right uses fear as a tactic to mobilize millions. And I believe that the side of freedom and justice, we have to use urgency and challenge our people, but we also have to be grounded in love, possibility, hope, and courage. Needs to be sort of what grounds you, and that you have a sense of you don't just have a responsibility to fight what we're up against. You have a profound duty to help build what will take its place. And I think it's that sort of thing that I feel like it's like pulling our neighbors aside and say, we have work to do. And yes, it's hard. Yes, it's challenging. Yes, we have to read. Yes, we have to do a lot of things. But I'm going to tell you, the project that we are up against is so powerful. It's so visionary, and it needs you. It needs you in order to win, in order for us to be victorious. And I think so. That's what that's why I tell my people that this is the duty and this is the responsibility. We all have a role and a position to play.
I love it. And I was wondering what woman was going to bring in love. We can't have successful movements without actually bringing in a valuable principle that so many of us know, cherish, and we learn from all the right people in our lives. And Kay, I just want to ask you, what would you say to your neighbor about this moment and their role? Where are you on this one?
So I live in Washington, D.C., and on my little street here on January 6th, there were a bunch of people who came, who are not normally here, who were wearing Nazi propaganda on their shirts and staying in the Airbnbs in our neighborhood. And I think what it's important for my neighbors to understand is that those people have not gone away. They are right here. They are building their power. They are building their strength. They are organizing for another day, and we better do it too. And if we don't do it, then we don't win, because they are most definitely doing it. And so we got to get together. Those movements Tenjiwe was talking about, everybody on every block who can be a part of this movement that Valencia was talking about. We got to go reach out to everybody, because we know that the other side is doing it, and we really have no other choice right now. So we need you. Join us. And honestly, you don't really have a choice but to join us either now or later, because we're going to have to take these folks on.
I love it. And I want to do one rapid fire question. Now, this is totally unfair, but it's just how I roll. But here's one rapid fire question, because we need you was the last statement. In your dream world, who would you choose to be right next to you in this climate work? Now remember, make it fun, make it good, and also remember they might be watching. So, Kaya, let me start with you. Who, and go big with it, and you can even go to history too, by the way. But who would you choose, Kaya?
I feel like you're gonna think I'm lying and that I'm copping out here, but there's literally nobody I would rather be with than the three of you. Literally. I can go into history. I can go to other time, space continuums. I can go all kinds of places, and I am not going to find anyone better than Colette, Valencia, and Tenjiwe to be with in this struggle.
Respect. I'll send you $20 in the mail. Tenjiwe, what about you? Is there someone coming from that northeast side? Who would you want next to you?
I'm I can't, it's hard going after Kaya's, but I have a twin sister, so she always is my hero. But the person I think often about is my great grandmother. She was my first teacher, and when I talk about ancestors and elders, I think about her. And when I think about duty and responsibility and a loving understanding of power, I think about her. In some ways, she is with me, but that's who I think of.
Ashe. And V, what about you? Who would you want next to you in this fight?
I mean, I'm already next to the best person, Colette Pichon Battle, since I've been in these climate streets. But if I can go back in history, you know, I'm gonna always run with Queen Mother, Fannie Lou Hamer, just the bravery of organizing in the Jim Crow South, from taking the assault to, you know, her vernacular. I love it. And I think that she would serve us even more in our future fight for Black futures.
Word up. Well, I just can't thank y'all enough. This has been an amazing conversation. I'm getting text messages and tweets already for the information that y'all have just laid down in front of folks. Respect. Thank you for the work y'all do every day. Thank you for all of the things you don't get thanked for. And thank you for caring about Black lives and this climate crisis. We're now gonna shift into the big reveal for today is the National Black Climate Agenda. I'm so excited. We'll talk a little bit about it here, but also if you want to know more, you can go to www.rbgnd.org. Thanks, everyone. Number 1, honor the water. In its simplest form, water is life and should be honored as such. We want constitutional protections declaring that water is a human right. We want corporate accountability for all the pollution that goes into our rivers, our streams, and our drinking water supply. We want federal standards to water affordability and accessibility. We want an emergency declaration on the climate crisis. And in our oceans and seas, we want an immediate end to deep water fracking and drilling and a ban to all future drilling in federal waters. Number 2, democratize energy. Energy is a human right, and in all of its forms, oil, gas, coal, sun, wind, energy is a part of the public commons and is for public control and public benefit. We call for a constitutional declaration of non-extractive energy as a human right and a national ban on oil and gas drilling. We call for an immediate divestment from dirty energy that harms Black lives and investment in sustainable energy that helps Black communities thrive. We want to democratize our utilities and reform our nation's utility system to provide sustainable energy access from generation to transmission for all who want it. And we want global accountability from the United States. We cannot continue to shift harm to the global South. Instead, we want to engage in the transition away from polluting industries to sustainable ones. Number 3, free the land. We stand with our indigenous brothers and sisters, and we demand indigenous sovereignty for all tribes and nations who want it. We want to see land stewardship as a type of reparations for Black communities. We want to end the commodification of land, and we want to protect all forests, wetlands, and natural barriers to the carbon crisis. There must be a national ban to retain and protect our forests and wetlands that buffer and stabilize Black communities. Number 4, we want to reimagine and redefine labor. The root of this climate crisis is in our economic system that encourages unlimited extraction, unlimited production, and unlimited consumption. We want to advance anti-poverty measures as climate preparedness, and we want a just transition for all workers on the front line of this energy transition. We want investment in a transition economy. We want investment in a care economy, and we want to ensure that anyone who wants a job has a job. We want to federally protect the right to organize, and we want new standards for doing business with and in the United States. Number 5, we want to end extractive economies and restore stolen Black capital. We want reparations to Black people as a part of climate preparedness, and we want new financing mechanisms that help Black communities to thrive. We want an end to the fossil fuel bailout and we want immediate corporate accountability for the polluting industries at the root of the climate crisis. Number 6, we want to advance democracy for the people and the planet. We want voter and election protection laws across the board. Number 7, we root ourselves in our right to breathe. We want an end to the pollution of Black communities. We call for an end to toxic pollution and the expansion of the oil and gas industry in EJ communities across the U.S. And we want the U.S. to invest in cleaning up Black communities. Brownfields, abandoned assets, we want them clean, we want them gone, we want our communities back. And we want an acknowledgement of the climate urgency. We want federal disaster preparedness rooted in equity for the front lines of the climate crisis. We want federal disaster response that addresses the issue of fair housing, and we want response that addresses the issue of climate migration, both inside of our borders and across our international borders. And finally, we stand in solidarity with the Global South. We want an end to all debt, cancel it, and we want to ensure that our brothers and sisters around the world who are not responsible for the emissions of greenhouse gases causing this crisis have the ability to restore themselves and to prepare for what's coming. We stand with indigenous peoples around the world, and we demand that the U.S. sign on to the United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People without condition.
We have a lot of room in the ranks, and we're asking you to take the pledge. 1, if you're a Black climate leader or working on any of the 6 pillars and are interested in advancing the RBG New Deal initiative, join the Hive by joining the Black Leaders Working Group. If you're new to this conversation and you're interested in learning more on how climate impacts Black lives, join the Black Rising Seas Network.
Thank you, Holy Spirit, for all that you've given us. Thank you for all of the people who fight on the front lines every day to protect our Black bodies, to advance our Black liberation. Thank you. Thank you for all of the people who work hard in our hospitals and our schools and our transportation. We thank you for the people who don't get thanked. Thank you for everything you're giving us. Thank you for what you're contributing to our society and to our family and to our community. And we thank you, Holy Spirit, for the ability to fight alongside our brothers and sisters in our indigenous nations, the immigrant communities that are here, with our queer and trans folks who are fighting for liberation. We thank you and we ask you to protect everyone as we continue to fight for the liberation of everybody. And we understand that nobody is free until we're all free, Holy Spirit. And we ask you to keep us in your arms, in your heart, and in your blessings. We're here to fight. We're here to win. We're here to save the planet, and we're here to save Black lives. Ashe. Ashe.